So this has the potential to be gigantic news if it's pounced on. Take a look at this from Ryan Grimm. He says, huge development. Manchin can support reforms of the filibuster, make them talk, etc., while removing the 60-vote threshold for a final vote, and still say that he did not end the filibuster. Hard to overstate how big this is. Igor Bobik says, Manchin on the filibuster to meet the press, quote, if you want to make it a little bit more painful, make him stand there and talk. I'm willing to look at any way we can, but I'm not willing to take away the involvement of the minority. Okay, so there's a lot to say about this, okay? Funny enough, now the position that Manchin is espousing now is my exact position, and has been my position all along. So the left has been saying, you got to get rid of the filibuster. Got to get rid of it. It's undemocratic. You need 60 votes through regular order to get anything done. We can't get 60 votes. It jams up the whole process. It makes it easy to obstruct absolutely everything. We'll get nothing accomplished. You got to get rid of the filibuster. Now, I do think that's a little bit short-sighted. You want to know why? Because oftentimes, Democrats are in the minority. Do I like the idea of making it 51 votes for Democrats to get stuff through? Yes. But you know what I don't like? I don't like the idea of 51 votes for Republicans to get stuff through. Especially since they're also more aggressive and are willing to force their unpopular agenda more. So I want to have the ability, when Democrats are in the minority, to block unpopular Republican things. So what's the solution? Well, right now, the way the filibuster works is the minority party just has to say, we're filibustering. And voila, now you need 60 votes in order to get anything through. That's bullshit. What it should be is the way the filibuster used to work. The way the original filibuster worked is like that movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I think that's the name of it, right? I think so. Where in order to filibuster, you had to actually filibuster. So you have to stand up there and not stop talking. You have to stand up there and filibuster. You have to keep talking to effectively block the legislation and not stop talking. So in other words, the filibuster didn't just require you declaring, I filibuster. You had to actually fucking filibuster. It was painful. So you have to really, 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 really want to block something in order to pull it off and organize it and be successful. I mean, that's the solution. So in that scenario, it is 51 votes basically to get stuff through, and only in very rare occasions. You know, would the filibuster actually be invoked, and would the filibuster actually successfully win? So I agree with Manchin. I think this is the answer. And you know who else has this position? Funny enough, Bernie. I mean, I guess Bernie may have changed his position more recently to, yes, abolish the filibuster, but I was never in favor of fully abolishing it. I think what you should do is force them to talk. Change the rules so that they have to talk. They have to actually filibuster when they filibuster instead of just declaring you need 60 votes to get something through. So anyway, and the reason that's my position, again, is because when the Democrats are in the minority, which is going to happen oftentimes, I want to have the ability to force the Republicans to get to 60 votes. I want to have the ability, as a last-ditch effort, to block something. So again, that's my position. Manchin is espousing this position. Now, this is a game changer. It's a game changer because that means we can reform the filibuster back to the original filibuster, which would make it so that more of the Democratic agenda is going to pass. Totally in favor of that. Totally in favor of that. Now, here's the part of the conversation that's infuriating. Even given Manchin saying this, even given him saying this, I don't even know if they're going to do this. Because it's like everything. It's like the $15 minimum wage. They say, oh, we want to do it, until they don't. Until it actually comes time to do it, and then 8 Democrats defect, and Biden and Kamala don't fight, and the Progressive Caucus doesn't have the backbone to hold up the legislation and force it in. So it's all talk, it's all fun and games, until it's actually time to do it, and then all of a sudden, nobody's there, and it doesn't work. So, I mean, that's the sad part of this conversation, is that even with Manchin now on the record supporting a filibuster that makes them talk, I don't even know if we're going to make it happen. Listen, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that's exactly what happens. I hope Biden and Kamala hear this, and the other Democrats hear this, and they immediately go to reform the filibuster, to take it back to the original filibuster, to make them talk. But honestly, I'm skeptical. And I think that it's much more likely the status quo stays exactly as it is. And in which case, you will continue to get basically nothing through. You get, 3 shots at reconciliation per year, so whatever the Democrats get through, it'll be through reconciliation, and basically nothing else will get through, and the Democrats won't go bold through reconciliation. They'll go very, conservative through reconciliation. They'll be very tame, and they won't go for the big parts of their agenda. And one of the other things Manchin said, I'm not sure if it was Meet the Press or somebody else, might have been Axios, he said, the next big piece of legislation, we need Republican votes, and if no Republicans come along, I'll block the legislation myself. Okay, well then that's a white flag. Nothing's going to ever get done. Because you're not going to get them. Josh Hawley was against a $15 minimum wage. The Republican who most nominally on paper is supposed to be populist was against even the $15 minimum wage. You're not going to get the elected Republicans for anything. Anything. See, the problem, Joe Manchin, is he makes no distinction, because also he's corrupt too, but he makes no distinction between your average Joe and Jane Republican voter and the corrupt politicians in the swamp of D.C. See, in my opinion, the politicians in D.C., the Republican politicians, and most of the Democrats, they're TFG. They're too far gone. They're not representative of the people. You look at some polls, a majority of Republicans support raising the minimum wage. So the real bipartisan thing to do was to do that $15 minimum wage, Joe, and you voted against it. But it's actually bipartisan because the voters support it 67%. It's only this skewed perception you have in D.C., which is the swamp, which is massively corrupt. Oh, we didn't get any Republicans. This must be a bad piece of legislation and not bipartisan. It's tremendously bipartisan because the voters are the ones that matter, not the corrupt TFG politicians. So it's infuriating. But anyway, I hope that they do this filibuster reform because I really think this is the way that it should work. I think you should have a last-ditch effort to block legislation, but you need to actually work for it. You got to fight for it. You have to do the filibuster. You have to talk and not stop talking. And it requires a tremendous amount of organization and will. And, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. So let's do this. But again, I'm skeptical. Even with Manchin saying it, you're going to have Biden and Kamala and the rest of them drag their feet because I don't even think they really want that burden, that pressure, where now you actually have the ability to pass a bold agenda. Because honestly, I don't think they even really want a bold agenda. They were against the $15 minimum wage. They could have fought for it. They could have won on it. They didn't. They chose not to do it, which tells me, yeah, they're not for the things that you and I are for. They are much more milquetoast neoliberal corporatists, and that's their ideology. That's their philosophy. So now they have excuses as to, we can't get it done because the big bad Republicans and the filibuster. What are we going to do? If you reform the filibuster to make them actually talk, they'd be exposed. And you would find out very quickly they're not in favor of a lot of the things that they say they're in favor of. So that's why I think they're going to drag their feet. But however, having said that, Manchin coming out in favor of the original filibuster instead of this new crazy filibuster, I couldn't agree with him more. That's Bernie's position. It makes the most sense, and I hope they do it, but I'm not going to hold my breath.